أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله تعالى عن السادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة العربة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah. Before we get into today's lesson, I just want to remind all of you, we show our commercial, our promotion for our upcoming tour to Gambia. And somebody asked me, I think last week, someone asked me, can I register now? And I'm like, yeah, that's why we advertise it. You can register now. So just in case it's not clear, maybe you want to go on the November tour, but not the June one. The November tour, the registration for that is open too. So the June and November tours to Gambia, they are open. You can register and hold your spot now. Registration is open. So someone asked me that I think last week, and so it dawned on me that it may not be clear that you can register and hold your spot. And I think it'll be easy on you, especially if you're not boiling like that. Most of us aren't boiling like that. So you get your $500 up and hold your spot, and then you can make regular payments, on up until the deadline. That way, you can make a bunch of little payments, once you get the initial registration out of the way. So you won't even feel it, especially if you register now. So that's one thing I've been meaning to mention for the last several days. Alhamdulillah. Facebook notifications not working. That's why we always say subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That's my backup. With platforms like this, as well as Masjid Muhammad of Atlantic City, I'm subscribed obviously to their Facebook as well as their YouTube. Because it seems like Facebook is a little bit less stable than YouTube is. I rarely have a problem with the YouTube notifications. So I know like when Imam Amin or anyone else that's teaching from that platform, when they go live, I definitely get a YouTube notification, but I don't always get the Facebook notification. And we do the same thing. We stream live to our Facebook uh, and YouTube channels at the same time. So if you get the new YouTube notification, you can just go straight to Facebook because we're there too. That's where most of us are dialoguing at. Because I guess because we old people, we still use Facebook. Young people, they use a whole bunch of other stuff. And I don't like like a lot of people do Instagram lives and stuff like that. I don't like their interface. I don't think I've done one Instagram video yet. Or maybe one. I don't remember. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't, they don't work good with secondary streaming services. Like a lot of us use StreamYard, which enables us to, stream to YouTube and Facebook. At the same time. But a lot of those services like StreamYard, they don't allow you to stream to like Instagram at the way they do, Facebook and YouTube. So it makes it harder. Alhamdulillah. So I wanted to mention that. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Fatima Muhammad Abdul Bar. Hope you checked your inbox, Abdul Bar. I sent you uh, the article that we're doing now. Imam Ibn Frisco Nadim, Abdul Haq, Zakiya Muhammad, Imam Abdul Rauf, Albuquerque in the building, Malika, Anthony, and your package is in the mail. Farouk, Miss Joanne, Allahu Akbar. It's always a pleasure to see you here. Brother Talib, Abdul Rahim, even you, Samira, Rashida, Isa, Abdul Zahir, alhamdulillah. Glad you're here. Malika asks, what does it mean by no flight package? Everyone makes their own flight arrangements? Yes. If you choose that package, and that package is good for someone, because like most of us that are going to come, they're US based. So, we can meet up at JFK. Well, maybe you from another country, maybe you're in the UK or maybe you're in the Caribbean, and maybe it's going out of your way to come to JFK just to go to Africa. So your situation may be better that you secure your own flight arrangements. So that's why that package is cheap. So that's what no flight means. So basically you take care of your own ticket, your own airline ticket and all that kind of stuff, getting to Gambia. And then once you land in Gambia, we got you. Imam, you're not streaming from your page. Oh, yes, I am. I'm seeing people comment from my page, like Asa. I don't know which page you're talking about. I have two Facebook pages. I have a regular Facebook profile page, Naeem Abdullah, and then I have a public page. That one, it says Imam Naeem Abdullah. That's the one I'm streaming from on Facebook. Imam Naeem Abdullah, not my regular personal page, Naeem Abdullah. Brother Talib said I did away with Instagram. Well, you got it, Abdul Bar. Good, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Mao. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, Samira.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm great. I wanted to add to the question that Malika asked. Not only those situations that you mentioned, another reason why we opened that up because some of y'all bougie. Yeah, y'all can't see yourselves sitting in the economy section. So if you want to fly first class, you are more than welcome to pay $10,000 for that seat in the front. Okay, so if you want that package, that would allow you to afford that first class seat in the front. And FYI, I don't know why people want to sit in the front of the plane when it dives down. Guess who's getting killed first? So I rather sit in front
Hey!
of
We don't want to talk about no getting killed and diving down.
I'm just messing. I'm just messing.
But also, just to add to what you're saying, Samira, because they got first class, business class. A lot of certain flights don't even have first class; they just have business class, which is another way of saying first class, really, right? But a lot of people they into this flight thing and they know how to get business class real cheap and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. So that could be another reason. Maybe you hustling and this is what you do. You know how to get business class for extra reduced price and all that kind of stuff. So that allows you to do all that. I'm just adding to what you're saying, Samira. We don't want to talk about no
I'm just
those
messing.
dives and planes going down and stuff.
I feel safer in the air than on the roads, to be honest. If you've flown, that's my impression. And Abdul Rahim said first class gets you there at the same time as economy.
The only part I don't like about economy, obviously, the width, because my shoulders are kind of big, wide, and so sitting next to somebody is always awkward. But the main thing I really don't like about economy is my knees on the other seat. So a lot of times now I started actively trying to get that emergency row seat, or even sometimes pay a little extra if they offer it for extra leg room. Is that all you was going to say, Samira?
Yes, that is all regards to that. And so again, the booking is open. It's been open since we've announced that we were canceling the November tour. So you act now, because if you do not act now, the seats are being filled. And it's being filled by those that went last year first. So they're getting their tickets. So if you want to accompany us, we advise you to at least put your $500 now down. It's non-refundable, but that locks you in. And then we'll have a payment plan. You can pay now up until the due date that we set, or you could pay it all at once right now just to make sure. But if you do not place your $500 down and you're hemming and hawing, you're not sure, then once you do want to book, because you don't pay right up front when you book with us, you only send in the preliminary information that we need to see if you qualify to come. And we know what that means. But once you turn in the application, you're not putting money up front, so that isn't a guarantee that you're coming. We send you a payment link once we receive your application, and we got everything that we needed, because we noticed that last time we didn't get all the information needed till the last minute, and we don't want to run into that because it causes other issues.
Yeah, like last year, earlier this year, the last tour, subhanAllah, people paid the money, so they locked their position in, and then we reaching out, emailing, trying to get the information we need to get the tickets and do other stuff, and people's not responding. They're not looking at their email or nothing. I'm like, yo, you just gonna give us your money and you're not gonna uh, help you to facilitate the tour, right? You're like, yo, hello, we need your name on your passport, right? So we can get your ticket, right?
Right.
People not responding, right? And so we would have did the same thing. Okay, they ain't responding. We just keep the money. They said it's non-refundable, right? Right. Then we would have been the bad guys. Oh, they robbing us, man. They just take our money and I ain't get to go on the tour.
So this
So,
time, once the seats get filled up, we will have a waiting list because it might be where somebody may drop out. We had a couple of people that dropped out for, legitimate reasons. And so that may open up a spot. So if you could at least send in your application, the deposit is a guarantee your spot. But if you at least have your application in, when I say application, I mean the form in with the information that is requested, you at least got your pinky toe in there.
yeah.
Your whole foot is, both feet is your deposit. So I just want
So
to.
in other words, last tour, we got the deposit from you all, and then we asked y'all for the information. We're doing it the other way this time. We want the information first. Make sure we got everything we need before we take your money. Okay, now we got your information, everything's good. Now send us the deposit. And then when you send us the deposit, that holds your spot. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Hakeem. So if that's it with regards to the tour, let's get back into our brother Rahimahullah Hamaas Abdul Khaalis, Al-Fatiha for his soul. Alhamdulillah. So far we've learned a lot about him. He was born in Gary, Indiana. What year was he born? Anyone remember? Uh, he he had some military training, got an honorable discharge. He uh, got on the jazz scene, got interested with Islam, in Islam, and then he got connected to a Sufi sheikh from Bangladesh. And once again, this was before there was such a country known as Bangladesh, but that's basically where he's from. And that sheikh trained him and advised him because the Nation of Islam is blowing up at the time. And this sheikh advised him to join the Nation of Islam, and keep your Islam undercover and try to give them da'wah from the inside. And so that's what he did. And he joined the Nation of Islam in 1951. And he rose through the ranks very quickly, became the national secretary, and even was speaking at a memorial in honor of Elijah Muhammad's mother, Mary Muhammad. This is when basically he suggested to all of them that they become quote unquote Orthodox Muslims. That's when he got booted out and kicked out. This is 1958 by Malcolm, and was basically erased from the history of the Nation of Islam. And at this point, again, 1958, he took on his Islamic name that he had before he joined the Nation of Islam. His name is, as the title indicates, Hamaas Abdul Khaalis. In the Nation of Islam, he was known as Ernest 2X McGee. And so now he's out of the nation. So he took back on that name, Hamaas, and he began working in Harlem with the children and like after school program type stuff. And and he tried and basically he built up his Jamaat, his Islamic community again, basically carrying on the work of his sheikh. And they called it the Hanafi method. So, like, if you Google this brother and his situation, probably the best way, even quicker than typing in his name, is typing in like Hanafi massacre, because that's basically what the people that know about him, this is what they know about what happened to him. So he's given da'wah, in New York, and he's building up the Jamaat. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Imad. You must have went back to sleep. Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Abdullah. So he's set up in Harlem, giving dawah, and building up the Islamic community. And then Lou Alcindor, who was going through a spiritual crisis, is referred to this brother for spiritual advice by his father. And so he goes there and he gives him shahada and gives him the name Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that we all know him by. And so, with him joining him, and he's an NBA player, he got money. So, he's donating, and he purchased them a house for a little less than 70,000 in DC. So that's basically like the headquarters. And he basically had at least about 4 communities in different states. I'm just reviewing what we did the last few days. And he had about 1,000 followers altogether. And they say a lot of them came through, after Kareem Abdul-Jabbar joined and took Shahada. And you find that a lot, in the Muslim community. Like, it was almost something similar to like when Muhammad Ali joined the nation. Boxer, heavyweight champion. He joins, and then he makes his conversion public. So a lot of other people's interested, and the numbers swell and the money comes. When we got more people, that usually translates to more money, usually. But black folks, it's funny. That's not always the case. But so it was the same thing with him. Then so he wrote this scathing letter and sent it to all of the ministers and temples of the Nation of Islam around the country, basically calling them out harshly, just basically clowning their belief system and just going in, right? And the response from the Nation of Islam to that was they went to try to kill him. He wasn't home, but they killed a large portion of his family, including women and babies, right? And so they was caught. Some of them snitched and turned state on each other, and they were convicted. And obviously, going through something like that, the way I say it, the way I view it, he snapped, and he tried to take matters in his own hands, and he took hostages in D.C., and he made some demands. And the standoff lasted for a little bit over a day until he surrendered, and he ended up getting life in prison. But he was actually out on bond or bail in pending sentencing, right? And so where we left off at yesterday was the aftermath after this massacre and the hostage situation. And so we're on page 18, the final days of the Hanafi method. And once again, I know they're using the word method, but he doesn't mean like the Hanafi school of thought, the method, right? He's talking about what they mean by Hanafi is they branded themselves Hanafi after what is meant in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Abraham, as Hanif, pure, the original, Dino Fitra, the original natural way to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Farouk Thomas asks, wasn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar also a part of State Street Masjid Imam? I never heard that before. Bismillah. All right, Samira, Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected shaitan. May Allah bless our master, Sayyidina Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, companions, and give them peace. All praise is due to Allah, for he is sufficient for us. Peace be upon his slaves, whom he has chosen, as to what follows. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi to everyone, and wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi to everyone that has given the greeting. The final days of the Hanafi Madhab. With Hamas in prison and the end of the siege, the building Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had bought was sold, and the movement slowly disbanded. Hamas and his movement slowly faded from the spotlight, and his work has been relegated to footnotes and texts on the history of Islam in America. Like their leader, the Hanafis, who were not imprisoned, likewise saw themselves as isolated and oppressed. Hamas's own brother-in-law, Reginald A. Hawkins Jr., Abdulaziz, was initially arrested on possession of illegal firearms and released on a $5,000 bail. He took no part in the hostage-taking episode, said some good would come from it because there might be someone who would make a sincere effort to study Islam because of hearing about the violence exacted at that time in the name of Islam. One last call to peace and civility went out in Hamas's name on November 28, 1979, in Iran during the Islamic Revolution, which overthrew the American puppet Reza Shah Pahlavi. The American embassy was captured by a group of student revolutionaries, and hostages were held for 444 days. And they were released when Ronald Reagan was sworn into office as president of the United States.
I remember this as a child. Like I literally remember this as a child. They just show you how propaganda is. I don't know nothing about nothing, right? So when this happened, I had to be 7 years old, right? And so this is what I remember. I remember that you couldn't just go to the gas station and get gas no more. They had a system. I think they had even and odd days or something like that, where based upon a number in your license plate, you could go on certain days, right? And I remember sitting in the car with my parents when a few times having to get gas, and the line to the gas station would be blocks away, and we just waiting to get gas, right? That's how long the lines was. I remember that. I also remember, you know how when you're a little kid, you jump on the bed? We know that, right? Samira Sasa, right? You jump on the bed.
Yes.
I remember myself, I don't know what I was doing. I was in my parents' room. I remember my mother being in the room. And I remember something coming on their TV, and they had a picture of Ayatollah Khomeini. And I remember jumping on the bed as a little kid saying, Ayatollah Khomeiniac, just jumping around acting stupid as a little kid, right? I remember that. So I remember that, I'm a little kid. I don't know what's going on, but I know that this dude is bad, right? Right. So just reading about this, remember, it just reminded me about this. And I have to re-look it up. But I could swear that, because I know it was election time, Jimmy Carter was running for office, and then this happened. I mean, he had the office, he was president, but he was running for re-election. Then this happened. And so it was like, oh man, he's done, right? He ain't getting no re-elected. And I think, I don't know why I remember this, but I thought Jesse Jackson went over there and got the hostages free. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Nathaniel. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Bismillah. During the hostage crisis, a letter was read after Jumu'ah prayers at the Embassy Mosque in Washington, D.C. by a Hanafi madhab supporter. The letter was forwarded to Ayatollah Khomeini, but no reply was ever received. As a former hostage taker, Hamas felt he could reason with the hostage takers and end the crisis peacefully. Hamas addressed the Ayatollah as his brother in Islam. He made sure to let the Ayatollah know that he wrote the letter as a symbol of Islamic brotherhood and solidarity. Further, Hamas also reminded him that the government of the United States did not initiate Hamas's appeal to the Ayatollah's reason. Hamas advocated justice for both the Persian and American people involved. As a Muslim, he wanted injustices resolved. Part of his appeal was to the humility of the Ayatollah. I'm asking you, as one who strives for humility and submissiveness, to prevent a mockery of our faith, Islam. He also called upon the Ayatollah to show the superiority of Islam in the name of Allah, to unify the Muslims and to show the world that all Muslims are highly civilized. Hamas never relented from condemning the United States government's failure to effectively prosecute the deaths of his family members, nor its anti-Islamic foreign policy, such as the support of the Shah. Another Hamas letters that dealt with Palestinian issues was read at the end of Ramadan at the Embassy Mosque by a Hamas supporter. Palestine is the national home of all Palestinians and all who wish to live in peace with them. It said, no one can deny that Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini of Persia is speaking the truth in regards to the enemies of Islam. It further discussed the plight of the Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem.
Aqsa. Aqsa.
I said Al-Aqsa.
No, you were stuttering. You were saying Aqsa.
You know what?
You was having a supererogatory.
Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem must not be in the care of the hands of the enemies of Allah, of Islam. Hamas closed the letter with a discussion of Islamic beliefs. Innovations have brought about disunity in the laws of Islam. But remember, Allah curses the innovator, and Allah also curses the one who shows respect to the innovator. Hamas died in November 2003 in the Federal Correction Facility Hospital in North Carolina, surrounded by family and friends. Some former Nation of Islam officials who wish to remain unnamed have stated that he was at one time being held at the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in downtown Chicago to relieve any danger of him being a militant leader. The violent side of his life, where he killed and took...
I'm assuming that they did this because, that's the home of the Nation of Islam, right? And so, in other words, we're going to use your enemies against you to keep you in line. And people will do that. Being in prison before, I know that's how they operate. And like, for example, back when I was in jail and in prison, and I seen this like clear as day, like in Rikers Island, right? Like, because, in New York City, I think it's safe to say, without even looking up the demographics, I think the largest demographic of Spanish-speaking people is probably Puerto Ricans. And contrary to what politicians and they put in the media, how we talk about black and brown and stuff like that, in jails and prisons, they been beefing. That's the reality, right? in the free world is politically correct, oh, black and brown, black, we right there with you all the time. But on the ground in real life, with the TV cameras cut off, right? In jail, in prison, at least in New York, they ain't getting along. At least when I was in there, right? I remember even I was cool with a Puerto Rican dude. He wasn't Muslim or nothing like that, right? This is upstate. We wasn't like real tight enough, but we used to kick it. Some Latin Kings, that's one of the gangs they had in New York, burned his bed. They burned his bed. Like, in other words, if someone wants to get you out of the dorm or the cell block, they'll burn your bed, right? So that's telling the COs that, oh, it ain't safe for him here. We're going to move him to another dorm or another cell block, right? In other words, we don't want to stab him, we don't want to hurt him, but we just want him up out of here, right? So they burned his bed, and the reason they burnt his bed is because he was hanging with the black dude, and that black dude was me. So when people be talking that stuff, I'll be like, yeah, right, all right, whatever. And so the point that I'm making is when the people that run the jails and the prisons, they play the numbers game to make sure that nobody get too strong, right? So if the Muslims are getting too strong, and back then Muslim equals black in jail and in prison, right? So, and for outsiders, when they looking at prison demographics and who's who with who, Muslim is usually on the black side. And then you got the Jamaicans, and Jamaicans usually mean everybody else that's black from the Caribbean as well, even though they don't see themselves like that, but that's the way they're looking at it. And then you had the 5%ers. Then you have the Nation of Islam. And then you have like the Latin Kings, Nietas, La Familia. This is the gangs that was in the jails and prisons when I was there. They didn't have Crips and Bloods in New York at this time, right? So if any one of them black groups is getting too strong, right, what they would do is, like, I remember, like, I was in the dorm, and dorms, before they double bunked them, they had like 50 beds in the dorms, right? In New York City, they didn't have skinheads like that. I don't even remember none of them like that. Even upstate, like the way they portray them on TV, New York State, at least, I can only speak for New York State. I can't speak for the feds or no other state. I know they, just from what I was told by others and what I see depicted, skinheads and them type of groups are way stronger on the West Coast. That's just, but Allah knows best. Anyway, if the blacks or any black group is getting too strong, what they would do is they'll start transferring people, and they'll dump a whole bunch of Puerto Ricans in there, right? Just to check the power, right? So, and then it also depends on who's the CO that's working the dorm, the regular CO, and because a lot of times the COs, they like their own gang, for real. And sometimes, and again, once again, my commentary is restricted to New York City, right, with regards to Rikers Island or the jail system. So a lot of times the COs be affiliated, and they want to see their team win. And so they'll use their official position to, when they come to work, shuffle everybody around and have their people running their cell block or their dorm. So it'd be all that type of stuff going on. So I've seen and experienced stuff like that. And again, I'm commenting on the part where they said, because he's in the federal system, and they said he's being held at Metropolitan Correctional Facility in downtown Chicago. That's Nation of Islam headquarters, Temple number 2, right? And then, put him right there, right? That's putting a check on his influence, because obviously you can say what we want about him after all of this stuff, but he had to have some leadership qualities in the age where there's no social media or nothing like that, to have, 4 cities or at least 4 cities and 1,000 followers. He had leadership qualities, right? And prison officials understand that stuff better than a lot of us. And so a lot of times they'll move you around to try to check and put a little bit control on your power. But this what that brought to mind. Anyway, go ahead.
Bismillah. The violent side of his life, where he killed and took hostages, and the part where most of his immediate family was assassinated, has been the focus to this point. But as his teachings and how they affected his followers and associates are much more important. The will be the focus of the remainder of this study. His booklet, Look and See, remains one of the last vestiges of the Hanafi madhab and a pioneering text in the nascent American Islamic literary canon, since it is one of the earliest texts to present the idea of an American Muslim identity in literature. Hamaas also does the latter by writing poetry to express these ideas, which he includes in his Look and See. What are the contents of Look and See? This small green 110-page booklet was self-published, full of spelling and grammatical errors, but is also a valuable source to undertake a close study of the ideology that Hamaas promulgated, which developed from Hamas's personal interaction of Sufism, the teachings of Mass Fard Muhammad, and the Arab civil rights movement. According to Hamaas, his Sufi mentor suggested for his to write the text, but he would only do so after his passing in 1967. Hamaas wrote, "Believe this, my Murshid teacher, Dr. Tasabir Uddin Rahman, a believer in Islam from Pakistan, India, said to write this book. He deserves and gets any compliments. Without the knowledge he passed on, this book would never have been written." You got to say something?
Yeah, I was, but I'll wait till you finish the paragraph.
This quote shows where Hamaas derived his teachings into the question, what was taught by Dr. Tasabur Rahman to Hamaas?
This point brings out something that we are sorely lacking during this time, where everybody just jumps up and feels that they have the right to speak or teach or talk, on Islam, without being given idhn or given or being given permission or commanded or given the blessings by your teacher. Like not, that's like really unheard of for a lot of us. But this is the way that, in classical Islam that you start teaching. You teach with the permission of your teacher or teachers. You don't just do it when you want to do it. And so that part really stands out a lot to me. And just reading, from not hindsight, but just trying to get into his head from reading this, like when he was writing about his interactions with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you see he's trying to transmit to him not only information but the Islamic adab, the Islamic way of doing things. Like when he quoted him telling him that, we don't use book you teach from teacher to teacher and stuff like that. Most of us here that are in this class were also in Imam Amin's class. And you heard him say many times how when he first started learning, he didn't even have books. He was writing the books, writing and copying from the mouths of his teachers, right? Subhanallah. And so a lot of times our idea of learning is coming from a Western non-Muslim perspective. And when we come into Islam, we don't come with our cup empty. We don't come with an open mind and say, listen, Islam has its own way of doing things, right? And so we try to change Islam to make it fit the way we're used to learning in this society, and that's not the best way to learn. Even if you look at how the Quran was revealed and preserved, and how the Sunnah was revealed, because it is revelation, and how it was preserved, you will notice, number one, that it's an oral transmission. It's an oral transmission. The book is the support. It's not the foundation. So you have different ways that knowledge is transmitted. Sama'an, meaning you heard from your teacher. You sat and you heard your teacher teach or say or read this book. Or you have the book and you read it to your teacher. Yeah. You know, all of them, like demonstrating it, as they say. So your teacher wrote or teaches a book, and you got the book, you memorized it, and you recite it in front of your teacher, for example. And the teacher says, yeah, you got it. Those are the two top ways of transmitting knowledge. Either you hear from your teacher, or your teacher hears you read or recite or teach or talk about whatever the subject matter is. And in both cases, he gives you your stamp of approval. A lot of us, we don't want to submit to the system. That's why you get so much kickback on who a sheikh is, who a sheikh ain't, and the way things are done. Because people don't want to submit to the system. They want to be able to go when they want to go. And Islam don't work like that. Abdullah said that's what they're doing to Imam Jamil Alameen. Exactly. The fact that he's in a federal prison system is the glaring proof of that. He's not convicted of a federal crime. He's convicted of a crime on a state level. But they said, so what? You know, he's too strong. Put him in the federal system so we can move him around from his power base. Rashida said, subhanAllah, learning something new today about the prison system. Oh yeah, prison. Ooh. Prison is like a large science experiment. They do all these scientific and social experiments in prison first. Just weird. I don't know the background or the science behind it, but I remember when I was locked up, that's when they did Desert Storm. Like right before that, right before I got incarcerated, it was the beginning of Desert Storm, you know, when they invaded Iraq. I remember about 2 years later, I'm in the back of the mess hall. The mess hall is like a cafeteria where they serve and prepare the food. And I remember I seen pallets with the food that's getting shipped in. And got all of these big cans of stuff with that stamped Operation Desert Storm. I'm like, what is food from Operation Desert Storm doing inside a prison, a New York State prison? It was just weird to me. Farouk said, and the Quran isn't linear reading that we're accustomed to from Western education. Exactly. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Farouk. I'm sorry, Samir. You get back to it, inshallah.
Bismillah. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar discussed this discussion about how Hamas' presentation of Islam differs from that taught in other Muslim communities in detail in his Giant Steps. But the essentials of what was taught by Hamas were never breached. Hamas gave the reason for the methodology he used when he taught Islam as that he was following an oral teaching back down to him from his teacher. Regarding Dr. Tassabur.
That's another point that I think we should bring out here. Sometimes we learn Islam in a traditional manner, right? And then we come to a people as teachers trying to teach Islam, trying to maintain the purity of not only the information, but how that information is disseminated. And we completely cut ourselves off from the people that need to be reached. And that's one thing, if you study the biography of the Sheikh Uthman ibn Muhammad, more famously known as Dan Fodio, he recognized that his people was all into poetry and all that kind of stuff. People ain't sitting in no class. And so he used to go to where the people was at, the marketplaces and stuff like that. And he would say poetry. Nothing deep, nothing heavy, just real basic in the Hausa language, because he's in the Hausa land, and this is the common language that everyone's speaking. So you understand that the Shehu, he has Fulfulde, he has Arabic, he has Hausa. What else am I leaving out? Arabic, Fulfulde, Hausa. He has at least 3 languages under his belt, right? So he's Fulani, so he could easily just speak his language where he's from. Or he's trying to call people to Allah. He could easily use Arabic terminology. But he went to the people where the people was at, and he spoke to them in a language that they spoke, Hausa, until he raised their consciousness enough that where they would attend his classes. And even then, he knew that men and women were used to mix. There was no separation between men and women. And understand that when the Shehu came, all these people already claimed to be Muslim. Islam had already been established hundreds of years before he came in that area. But it was just Islam in name only, like a lot of other places. So he didn't, when they came to his classes, he didn't say, okay, nah, this class is for men only. We got separate classes for women. He let them all come, and he separated them. And then the more serious students, then they were able to have separate classes for men and women. So you see how he raised them up degree by degree, slowly, but slowly, slowly. And so a lot of times when our teachers come back and teach, they're so stuck in the pure way that was transmitted to them, and they try to transmit it to their people like that, and it just don't work. Like, for example, Imam Amin, may Allah protect and preserve him, he mentioned lots of, I was laughing because I remember a few months ago, I think Samira might remember, on my YouTube timeline, I came across an old video of CJ, the barber, trying to get Imam Amin to start teaching online. He was like, no, he doing it. It don't work like that. You know, you need to come, you need to be in person, face to face. And he was going hard on that, right? And now look at him. So he came to realize that, hey, you got to meet people where they at. And so now he online every day. Before he would not teach online. No, not doing it. So this part reminds me of that. Like sometimes you have to not compromise your message, but sometimes you have to make it in such a way that it's palatable to the students. And then once you get the serious students, and then you can bring them closer to the right way of doing things. Farouk said, quote, students have to come to the teacher. And that's true. Because even Imam Malik, when he was asked by the Amir of Medina to teach his son, they made the agreement, made the arrangements. And then when the day came for Imam Malik to come, to teach his son, he was expecting Imam Malik to come to his palace to come teach his son. And Imam Malik didn't show up. And then he asked him about it. And he said this, beautifully, this beautiful Arabic language, because you can use the same word, just change some vowels around and change it from active to passive. He said, al-ilmu yu'ta la ya'ti. He's talking about the word ata, which means to come, right? He said, Ilm, knowledge, yukta. You have to go to it. La yati. It don't go to you. Right? So, and this is the adab that a serious student have. If you really want to learn from somebody, right, you go to them. You don't wait to them to come to you. And that's one of that's part of the mannerisms of a good, serious student. Like you go to the knowledge, it don't come to you. But teachers and scholars recognize that the average person, they're not even up to the level where they can understand that concept. So for at least a little time or in between time, in the meantime, until they raise the awareness of the students, they will go to where the students are at, and they will try nothing heavy because they don't even recognize the fact that the teacher shouldn't even be coming to you. You should be coming to the teacher, right? You don't even recognize that yet. So they'll come to you with some basic general reminders, basically reminding you that, hey, you're supposed to be interested at least in learning your Farad Ain, at least, right? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So, and whenever I talk about this, it just reminds me of the old comedian that died. I don't even think I was Muslim yet when he died. Robin Harris. If you're old enough, you remember they made a cartoon out of a portion of one of his stand-up acts called Bebe's Kids. Now, you young whippersnappers may not remember that, right? You got some gray in your beard, you might remember that. Bebe's Kids. We don't die, we multiply. They made a whole cartoon out of that. But that Bebe's Kids idea was part of a stand-up that routine that he did. And part of that same stand-up, he had this little stand-up comedians, they doing their thing. He's talking about how black folks are, they lazy, right? You say dudes sitting around smoking weed all day, ain't getting a job or nothing. Think the job is supposed to come to you. Who is it? Job. Oh man, come on in. They got me waiting for you, right? He said, that's how we are, right? This is how we are with knowledge, though, right? No, you're supposed to be learning your deen. All right. Who is it? Knowledge. Oh, come on in, man. I've been waiting for this Farad Ain delivery for a long time, man. Come on, sit down, man. Break me off, right? This is us, right? With knowledge, we the same way. Subhanallah. So I'm sorry, Samir. Go ahead. I keep saying sorry, Samira, because Samira is a busy woman. So, she's really helping me out by reading for me. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah.
Regarding Dr. Tasabir Uddin Rahman, all the text look and see tells the audience that he was from Pakistan and that his teaching were highly esteemed by Hamas. One of the former security guards at the Hanafi Madhab Center with the pen name of Parsifal answered a few questions via email correspondence in October of 2006, but these have not been verified elsewhere. Parsifal was able to add the following about Hamas's teacher. Hamaas Abdul Khaalis considered himself the spiritual successor of his Sheikh Dr. Tasabur Rahman, and thus did not refer to himself as Imam.
Like we mentioned before, that's why he used the term Khalifa. Go ahead.
He felt that only those youth fully trained in Islam could gain that title. During his life, only 4 Hanafis ever attained that exalted title. Sheikh Dr. Tasabur Rahman was born in Bengal in the early 1900s and came to the United States in the 1940s. He was a praying, mystical man and a direct descendant of Abdul Qadir Jilani. His main efforts were at exposing the fraud and fakery of Jewish Kabbalists in the name of religion and civil rights. Many spiritual happenings have been attributed to the Sheikh. On the East Coast, there was a major blackout. Hanafis claimed that it was him showing the power of dhikr. but the news media claimed a transformer had failed. Other miracles included him speaking to the dead at a funeral and receiving a reply. He returned to our Rub, Allah, in 1967 and is buried in New Jersey.
That's one of the things, especially a lot of us, we're new to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'at. So, we're trying to realign ourselves, a lot of us. Like, okay, now we're Ashari or Maturidi in Creed. So we got the Iman or the Aqidah section straight. Okay, so now we follow a madhab now. We Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, or Hanbali. All right. So now we're trying to get this tasawwuf part right. So I'm trying to find a tariqah I should join. This is one of the things you have to be aware of when you're trying to find a tariqah or a spiritual brotherhood or a group to deal with. A lot of times, what I watch out for a lot, this is just my own personal opinion, right? When people is trying to get you in, suck you in, they spend a lot of time talking about the miracles of the Sheikh, right? And we don't necessarily disbelieve in miracles of the Sheikh. If you go back to our Aqidah, even if you look at the Aqidah of Imam Tahawi, it's part of our creed to not only believe in the miracles of the prophets and messengers, which are called mu'jizat, but also in the karamat, which also means miracles of non-prophets, right? Non-prophets, right? So in Islam, we believe that non-prophets perform miracles. And there's evidence of that in the Quran itself. We know of many non-prophets in the Quran who done miracles. And that didn't stop with the coming of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That goes on through to today. So yes, people do perform miracles, and the miracles are only meant, just like the miracles of the prophets and messengers, to not to call to oneself, but to call to the truth of the message of Allah, and call people to Islam or back to Islam, right? So, but one of the things you have to watch out for are they use miracles or bootleg miracles to call you to the Sheikh. It'll be something else, right? Like, for example, I'm not commenting on the blackout that's mentioned here, but like say you may follow a so-called sheikh who's always making dua against the government, for example, right? And the people oppressing people, right? And then so an airplane will go down, right? Airplane will crash. And then the same sheikh will say, see, Allah answers the dua of the awliya, right? See, we've been praying for this, right? Like Negro, right? Some of these guys are so sinful, they ain't getting no unveiling. Like, how are you going to be a wali of Allah and you got a list of major sins that you involved in, right? This type of stuff that be going on. So you got to watch out for these jokers. That's all I'm saying. Like, a lot of times they'll claim credit for other stuff that they ain't have nothing to do with, but you already open for it, right? The fact that you following him, you already open for it. So you're like, yeah, he did pray, make that dua last week. Yeah, subhanallah, yeah, right? We get caught up in it. It's the same way that people get caught up in different gambling schemes or multi-level media, multi-level marketing schemes, right? You're already fed up with the 9 to 5. You don't like the 9 to 5. You're looking for a get rich quick scheme. So you already open for it. And so as soon as somebody comes and sounds good, right? Or you with it. All I gotta do is pay $39.99 to join and bring in 2 more people. And you said the other guy, the testimonial says that they got rich doing this, or I'm all in, right? And then so you go to the meeting. They all do the same thing. You go to the meeting at the hotel, and it's just nothing. The meeting is just a big, gigantic testimonial. All these people telling their story. I just got fired from my job. I didn't know where my next check was coming from. And then I got a visit from Brother John here. Give a round of applause for Brother John. John told me all I had to do was become part of his network and invite my friends to buy things that they're already using anyway, and I'll change my life, right? They show the pictures. I didn't have no car. This is my bus pass. This is what I'm driving now, right? Right, then you all in, right? And yeah, it takes a couple of people do win, right? But a whole gang of people lose, right? They ain't gonna bring them up there, right? So it's the same thing with these fake shakes, right? There's some testimonials, yeah, right? You know, the shake gave me this dua, and I said it, and I see my situation change. I was broke, you know, and I asked Sheikh to give me a good dua that'll increase my income, increase my risk. And I made that dua. And my financial situation is a lot better. Negro, you didn't start putting in job applications after the Sheikh gave you the dua. You don't see. Somebody from the outside could see it, but somebody that's inside is caught up, they can't see it. Negro, you was always showing up late, then you got fired, right? The Sheikh gave you that dua and you took your job seriously, right? But you attributed it all to the Sheikh, right? Oh man, my marriage was on the rocks. And the Sheikh gave me this dua, right? My marriage is strong now. Negro, your wife had a list of complaints against you, right? You asked the Sheikh for the dua. You said the dua, but you started taking your wife's advice. She don't have those complaints against you anymore. Happy life, happy wife, happy wife, happy life. Right? No, it was the Sheikh's dua. All right, brother. Oh, I'm sorry, Samir. Go ahead.
Bismillah. Look and See was the first publication to teach Dr. Tasawwur Adin's version of Islam, and it developed from the founding of the Hanafi Madhab in 1967 and the movement of the national headquarters to Washington, D.C. in 1973. The Sufi teachings were slowly replaced by an open attack on teachings of the Nation of Islam, a focus on a rejection of racism, and a struggle to expose the Zionist control of media, banking, and the government.
You know what this reminds me of? And Samarica bear witness. We were just watching a documentary, and a lot of times you can lose focus of what's important. Meaning, you know, all of us, leaders, teachers, even husbands and wives, because if you're a husband and a wife, you're a leader, right? You have to master doing more than one thing at the same time. You can't just take your focus off of everything else that you're responsible for and give 99% of your attention to that one thing. Like, for example, if you're a husband, you have a wife and children, you can't just ignore your wife and focus 99% on your children. It has to be more of a balance than that. You have to do more than one thing at the same time. And then you got to go to work. You got to make your money. You got to focus on all that stuff. If you're a leader, and if you're an adult, you're a leader in some shape, form, or fashion, you have to master doing more than one thing at the same time. At any point in time, your focus goes too much to one thing, everything else is going to die out. And so you can see, obviously, because of the attack that happened, you know, on his family, he lost focus with everything else and just, you know, was focused at that. And sometimes that's extremely hard, especially if something traumatic happened like that. It's hard not to lose focus or focus too much on one thing and ignore everything else. So keep that in mind. Go ahead, Inshallah.
Bismillah. The fight for civil rights pervades the pages of Look and See, as does the fight against all forms of false belief and false worship demonstrated by followers of the Nation Islam and white supremacists. The guideposts used by Hamas to delineate true Islamic faith are the Quran, the Hadith, and oral teachings of Dr. Tasabur Uddin Rahman. The first goal of his dawah message is to get his students to learn their true history, to seek to understand themselves, their history, and heritage. After seeking to learn their history and heritage, the more spiritually minded students seek to learn the inner knowledge of the Quran and Hadith. Hamas called his mentor a Hanafi Muslim. This has two immediate meanings that comes to mind. One, a follower of the Hanafi school of Islamic jurisprudence, which developed around the scholar Abu Hanifa Numan. And two, someone who follows the truth and worships only one God without having been taught to do so. The Prophet Ibrahim salam is this example used for this concept in the Quran and in many Sufi texts and prayers. In ritual prayer, Ibrahim is prayed for as the model prophet and patriarch. O God, send your mercy on Muhammad and his posterity, as you sent your mercy on Abraham and his posterity. You are the most praised, the most glorious. O God, send your blessings on Muhammad and his posterity, as you have blessed Abraham, salam, his posterity. You are the most praised, the most glorious. For Hamas, all people were Hanafis by nature, but have been taken away from their righteous leanings by false teachings from ministers, their parents, white supremacists, etc. Anyone could become Muslim, but he felt that it was his mission to bring the misguided African American back to knowledge of their true nature, true history, and true form of worship of God. In his view, the slave master invented the terms of color, and he calls them stigmas. People who hold on to these stigmas have no sense of self, place, or history. In the Nation of Islam, this idea was also taught when they used the phrase so-called Negro. While in the Moorish Science Temple's sacred text, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple, we read, 9. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan. Hamas used the language of groups he fought against in his text, but he rejected many of the contexts that the language arose from, such as the mythologies of the NOI and MST. He uses the phrase so-called Negro in term trichonology, but he refers to both the teachings of the NOI founder, Fard Muhammad, and the teachings of white supremacists as being trichonology. To undo the mythology and replace it with truth, the stigmas of slavery and oppression had to be removed. The slave master, and their descendants all have to be shown the truth. There can never be respect or peace among the families, tribes of the human family until such counterfeit terms are erased from the minds of the perverters of truth, who violate their own self-creation and try to make such stigmas reality of human creation. To those who follow such an aimless philosophy and psychology, it would be well for them to remember that such seeds of ignorance and disrespect will grow to become vines of destruction, not only for themselves, but will entwine and strangle their future, their children. As the leader of his Jamaat community, Hamas did not make race, class, or color a criteria for membership. In fact, he railed against both white and black supremacy, while teaching the need to study your history and culture. When a man has a stigma of color, black, white, etc., he does not have a national or tribal origin. Hamas does present a method to remove the stigma of color that comes from worshiping a white Jesus. To save yourself from the captors, settlers, philosophy, and psychology, you must find out what Islam is not. We civilize those who strayed from Islam, and they let their low desires and false accomplishments make them gods. But gods die. Gods, with the little g, can be made and destroyed. Allah, the creator of all things, does not die. According to Hamas, Islam teaches the correct worship of God and the true nature of man. A man with a national origin can never be a permanent slave, nor happy in a state of temporary servitude. The enslaver disobeyed their God by the act of oppression and subjugation, while the enslaved was cut off from the family of man. He also enforced the enslaved to worship gods that they had no prior knowledge of, i.e., a white Jesus. This teaching is also found in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple. Number 15. The time has come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. 16. Though through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. 17. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatic of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father and strayed after the gods of Europe of whom they knew nothing. For the Hanafis, the reclaiming of one's history and heritage and the worship of the one true God is the first steps in becoming a Hanaf, or a natural worshiper. The enslaved become free when their mind is freed from the stigmas and the body of the shackles. The captor can only be freed from evil committed by creating the stigmas of color, oppressing others when they bow their heads in shame and repent. The slave and the captor become reliant upon each other, and they must be saved together. Hamas held that following the standards of the Quran and Hadith will end the psychology and mindset created by the captor and captive relationship. The Hanafi madhab followers do not seek to make everyone Muslims, but they seek to establish standards of ethics and morality as guides for the rest of the humankind. They reject false prophets and misuse of the sacred texts. The Hanafi Muslims are patriots and do not fight against the nation they reside in. For Hamas, the Hanafi madhab was a saved sect mentioned in the Hadith. Verily, it will happen to my people even that they will split into 73 sects similar to the children of Israel. But every one of these sects will suffer except one, the faith of which is professed by me and my companions. Given the above hadith, the way the Hanafi Muslim is one where there can be no compromise between falsehood and truth, or with the following of the Sunnah way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu in belief, worship, and lifestyle. The doors of the masjid mosque are open to all with no barriers based on caste or color, according to Hamas. The only barriers to learning are due to personal moral or ethical weaknesses. According to Hamas, the only other source of guidance besides the Quran and Hadith was the Hikmah, or the 130 point of wisdom transmitted oral from his mentor, Dr. Tasabur Uddin Rahman. These principles were, and I quote, these principles were referred to as a whole by Hamas and never written down. He taught them as a matter of daily life. He used to say, the first principle is that you're not right, when the first principle will be to lock the door against you as an intruder. Hikmah means wisdom and how things work from a divine point of view. Hamas warns against taking instruction in Islam from anyone whose teachings do not conform to the above standards. He further refused to call the Creator God, but used only his proper name, Allah. Being patriot is part of this because being in a land, one generation makes you part of it. And having foreign teachers teach hatred of your land is against the teachings of Islam and the Hanafi Madhab Center. The ultimate aim is to produce new generations that are more knowledgeable and with stronger morals than prior generations. There can be no true, positive, constructive education without a human curriculum that generates and produces a better, higher, and more respectful generation than the previous generation. The individual must be educated as to self-identity, self-culture, and self-heritage. Hamas also railed against homosexuality, lesbianism, same-sex marriage, secret societies, and loose morals. He wrote, an unnatural philosophy and an unnatural psychology led to unnatural practices. In order to be natural, you must obey and practice what Allah has made for all mankind, the faith Islam. In the view of Hamas, the knowledgeable American Hanafi Madhab followers will become the ambassadors of a new tomorrow where hatred and untruth are no longer the norm. Change of mindsets, not just name and clothing, are the aims of liberation in Islam. For the Hanafi Muslims, the goals of freedom or religion and mutual respect are both American and Islamic ideals. Conclusion. Hamas is rarely mentioned today outside of footnotes in the history of Islam in America. The Nation of Islam was able to diminish his role in their history by rewriting history and cropping and retouching photos, and by deleting Hamas's name from official papers. His supporters are not prominent in the larger Muslim community, nor has his most famous former follower, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, discussed his writings, speeches, or teachings to any great extent beyond a few passages in his autobiography, Giant Steps. Future historians will be tasked with telling his story more fully and finding his place in the development of an American Muslim identity. Hamas came into Islam with a group of jazz musicians and Sufis, went into the Nation of Islam, and later carried out the role of teaching a spiritual Islam that sought to correct political and social issues, but is remembered as one of the first homegrown Islamic terrorists. This last phase of his life resulted in imprisonment for him and a dozen followers. He died in prison, and his movement slowly died between 1977 and his own demise. Perhaps this study will be the beginning of writing a more complete, accurate, and historically faithful portrayal of Islam in America.
Alhamdulillah. The rest of the pages have his bibliography, in other words, his sources that he used to present this paper. And then after that is an appendix talking about the creed of Hamaas Abdul Khaalis, Hanafi Madhab Center. And we're not going to read that. And like I said, if anybody wants a copy of this, inbox me and I will send it to you, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So that's that. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding our subject matter over the last 3 days? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Abu Rayyan. I think the end of what we just finished reading, I think it answers Malika's question right here uh, regarding any students or anything like that. What was his teacher a doctor of? Abu Rayhan asks. It just mentions that he was a spiritual sheikh. I'm not sure. I don't remember him mentioning him being a quote unquote doctor, unless I missed that. It's actually not a book, it's an article that our brother Muhammad Abdullah Al Ahari wrote that I found on the internet some years ago. The same author who wrote the book on Umar ibn Said that we just finished reading, he wrote this article. This is what we've been reading from. So if anyone wants a copy of this, I can email you a PDF, inshallah. MashaAllah, they were taught the haq too bad for those who rejected it then and now. Yeah, a lot of our people, man, we reject the truth when it comes to us. Because Malcolm spoke about that a lot. Malcolm understood our psychology. That's why sometimes you gotta, even for real, even the Sahaba, like first and foremost, Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha, talked about that. She mentioned how if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have first came with this is haram, and I'm paraphrasing the hadith, she mentioned, I think, like zina or fornication, adultery, or drinking and stuff, right? If he would have came with that first, the people would have swore by Allah that they're never going to give that stuff. But that he came talking about Allah. In other words, he came talking about the proper creed first. He came talking about Allah. He came talking about the hereafter. And so by the time the prohibitions came, the people were ready for it. It was just a natural progression. And I think a lot of times we don't take a lesson from the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to know where we're at, and we have to know where our people are at, and we have to give it to them in stages. I mean, you compromise anything, but you're already dealing with people that are already beneath the mark. You have to bring them up. It's just like, for example, you're on the first floor and you're trying to get somebody up to the second floor. And you just say, come on, just jump. You can do it. Everybody can't jump and grab onto the second floor and pull themselves up. Some people, you need to have steps there, right? And some people, you need all of the steps. Some people can't jump, but maybe if you put a little ladder there, a step ladder, they can stand on the step ladder and then hold on to the second floor. And I'm saying this, I'm hoping you're visualizing this with me. Just imagine you're remodeling a house, for example, and the steps are rotted out or whatever. So you remove the whole steps, right? And you tell, come on, I want you to look at the second floor. Like, there's no steps here. Come on, jump, man, you can do it, right? Everybody ain't in shape like that, can't jump, right? Well, some people, you might need just a little step ladder. Don't even have to go all of the way. Just something that they can stand on in order to reach the floor of the second floor so they can pull themselves up and get up there. Some people, they can't even do that. Some people, you need the steps there. Put the steps there so they can walk those 10, 12, or however how many steps it is to get to the second floor. And so a lot of times we come teaching and stuff like that, and we want people to jump. Now, sometimes people can't even walk to get to the steps, to take the steps. So you got to meet people where they're at and help them, give them what they need so that they can stand up and walk. You may need a railing on the side. Some people don't need no handrail. Some people need a railing, right? Some people need a wheelchair lift, right? You got to give people what they need. If you really want them to get to the second floor, you have to give them what they need to get there. Alhamdulillah. Okay, Abdullah, I see your email in the comments. I will send you a copy, inshallah. My pleasure, Miss Joanne. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, man, our history, subhanAllah. Man, there's so many stuff we can read. Our history. Boy, you gotta watch these jokers. My mind is just going over so many things. I don't want to count the words up, but anyway, alhamdulillah. So we pray that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our brother Hamaas Abdul Khaalis for his sins. We pray that all of his family that were killed or considered martyrs, shuhadat, and or given or admitted straight into paradise after their savage murder. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will consider him one of those who tried to revive the deen of Islam in this land of ours. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to learn from their successes and their mistakes and help us understand the environment and the temperament of the land and the people that we're living in. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. And I forget, half your Deen show, 8 o'clock, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Pt2. 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 Pt Pt2